Hey, what's up, everybody? So this video is going to be pretty simple. It's going to be how I'm starting a website in May 2025. And so we'll make this a little different is I'm kind of going to focus on how I set up the site or the app for design and for the UI building. And so I think, we're at a great time right now where we can build things quickly. And I think it's worth putting in the extra effort to kind of build the bottom layer design system. And then that way AI can build off of it, and things will look a lot nicer than if we just start from nothing. All right, so here's how I'm starting. So I use PMPM, so I'm going to use PNPX, but you can use NPX if you just use NPM. And I'm going to say shadcn init. And shadcn is awesome because even if you don't have a project that you're in, it will kind of like auto sense that and then allow you to create just like a Next.js basic template. And so I'll just use Next.js, not a mono repo today, and we'll call it design starter. And then it'll take a second to just build. But basically what it's doing is just doing npx create next app at latest. And then we'll be able to choose our base color scheme. I'm going to go with stone. I really like it. It's going to make our globals, add our CN utility, and then we're good to go. So let's cd into design starter. And then what I'm going to add next is called the craft design system. It's something I made that basically gives a base design system for AI to use on top of shadcn so that when it's building pages and layouts and templates, it has a little bit more direction and you can kind of control the spacing, padding, that type of thing. And so to do that is PMPX craft ds init. And then you can see it was pretty fast, but it just added, I'll show you real quick. Let's do windsurf -r to replace this current window and then period into the design starter. All right, so now we're in the windsurf for the design starter. And so in components, there's this ds.tsx for design system. This is built from Craft, and you can see there's a section which handles the kind of like as a wrapper component for content, and then also handles the vertical spacing, and then the max width and some more like responsive spacing is handled by the container. And then from there, there's also a nav because that's a little bit different, less padding. And then there is a main that we can use to wrap our layout in, and then a pros component, which I'll show you soon. But that basically applies a baseline design system where you can do spacing and you can make it an article if you want. All right, so we've got that set up. So now from here, let's just run it so we can see what we're working with. PMPM dev, and then I'm gonna open up Arc. Here we are. Let's reload this to get started. Great. So we've just got the boilerplate Next.js template, right? Okay, so let's close this. Let's go to the home page and let's go ahead and just get rid of everything here. And then we're gonna add a main from Craft. And then I'm also going to bring in, so we can see how it all works, a section and a container. And then, so let's get started by going into our main and then adding in a section followed by a container. And then let's add a H1 that says hello world, of course. And then a paragraph that says this is a paragraph, not prose. All right, cool. So we've got that set up. So let's take a look at our local host now. You can see like there is already this padding that's being applied and it works dynamically on a wide or a mobile scale. That's cool. Let's say we want to bring in our design system with all of the right spacing and sizing. So that's where pros comes in, and we've already imported it. So I'm just going to create pros, paste that in there, and then you'll see, boom, it starts working. We've got our H1 sizing and our paragraph sizing, and all of this can be changed, right? So that's the point, is this is for you to mess around with and change. So you can see the heading styles are all right here. You can make it smaller, bigger, whatever you want to do. But you can see that on the like the spacing in between these things isn't working. Like that's too tight. If we added another example, let's do H3. It's all too tight, right? And so what craft comes with is if you do is spaced, and then that will default to being true. You can see we've added spacing. You can just go to town that way. And then also if you're pulling in data from a CMS, that type of thing, it's easy to style it by just wrapping it in a prose. If I wanted this, if I was doing that and I wanted it to be an article instead of a div, which is default for the prose, I just say is article is set to true. That's kind of like the basics of craft setup. This is looking cool, but we need to add like a nav and a footer, that type of thing. Okay, so now we want to add, let's work on the layout because that's a big part of this, and something that's important for your base design system. What ships default with Next.js now is the use of their Geist fonts, which are great fonts. I love Geist. I think they're amazing. What I like to do to make this a little bit more dynamic and easy to change is I like to switch this out and say as font sans and then move this to as font mono. So why I like to do that is then I can easily just switch the import of whatever variable font I want from Google, and then that will update my whole site. So let's update everything else accordingly. And yeah, so we're going to rename it from Geist Sans to Font Sans and to Font Mono. And then we'll need to update our body to use the Font Sans and the Font Mono, right? And then the other thing is these variables, we're going to change to Font Sans and Font Mono so that it's not tracked to Geist. And then so we'll need to update in our globals the font that's being used, which is right here, and then font mono. Nice. All right, so now that we set that up, it's as easy as switching out this one part with any other Google variable font, and then it will update everywhere. So obviously, like we're using Geist right now. If I switch this to Manrope, now we're using Manrope, right? So pretty easy. I like to just do that for ease of use. And when I'm building something, then I can test some different fonts and feel and like kind of decide on which one's best. Great. So that's kind of the font setup there. Then what I'm going to bring in is the nav from our design system. And then, yeah, let's build the nav. Okay. So I like to do it in a separate component just to keep it clean. So we're going to do header equals, and then we're going to return the nav. And then within the nav, how it works is, so if we go to this nav, it already has a container inside called the nav container. And if we want to access it, we'll use the container class name to add Tailwind styles. So let's do that. So let's add in let's do a link, and we'll say logo as if we were making a logo. And let's just make it, we got to import link. And then, yeah, let's make it font semi-bold and tracking. And then you can't see it because we haven't put it in, of course. So let's do that. There's our logo. And then I'm just going to add a border bottom, just so we can kind of like differentiate between these. And then I'm also going to add a link here. Let's add a button. So let's add a shadcn button. So I'm going to kill the server, clear this, and do pmpx shadcn add button. And if you haven't used shadcn, this is how you add new components. Just pmpx shadcn add, and then you can add any of the components that he has on his site, ui.shadcn.com. And then they'll just get added directly into your components/UI folder. So let me start the server again. And from here, let's import. Let's use a button. See if it will auto. It won't. So we'll add the button there. And then let's do a good old CTA button, get started. And then I'm going to wrap this in a link because I want it to go to a different page eventually, right? When you make your website. For now, I'm just going to give it an anchor because we don't have any other pages. And then you'll want to make sure you pass in as child on the button so that all of the reference gets passed down to the link. Okay. So now we have that set up. Let me save that. Okay, so now we have the button with the link, but you can see, right, we don't like that. It's not how we want it to look. We want the button over on this side. So to do that, that's where we had mentioned in the nav, there's this thing called the container class name, which gets you into the container itself, and we'll just add a justify between and a gap too, just in case it ever gets to that point. And then we'll do the item center, that way everything is aligned nicely. Okay, so we have a nav, a home page, and then we're gonna bring in a footer. Okay, so let's just copy this whole thing. Let's call it the footer, and then there is no footer component from Craft because it's basically the same thing as a section and container, so any other part of your site. So what I'm gonna do is just remove everything and then add in a section and then a container, and then we're gonna import those along with the nav and come back down. Then we've got our footer, and we're gonna, let's copy this. Oops. Okay, and then we're gonna add in this link here. Let me duplicate it, bring it down, and let's put it in the side, the container, and then we'll have the old copyright. Okay, and then you got to make sure to add that to the actual body. Come back, we have ourselves a footer. I'm again going to do the same thing to the section and add a border top. And then let's do like an accent background of 30. So there you go. Now we have a footer component, a nav component, and then a section component. And then something I like to do to take it a little bit further is I don't like this, how if it's not tall enough, then the footer isn't connected to the bottom. And so how you can take care of that is pretty simple. In the body, you'll add flex, and then flex call, and then min height screen. And you can see nothing happened, but now the body is the height of the screen at minimum. And then I'm going to do this where I bring up main from our pages and use it here, because every page then will have its own main. If you're building an app, maybe you want to change that and have a different layout, that type of thing. Have this be a page layout, something to think about. And then I'm going to go back to here and get rid of our main, so we don't have duplicated main components. Perfect. So then from the layout, what you want to add is a class name of flex1. And so now the center portion will grow to fill in the flex container, right? It's similar to using like an auto height property, but in flex now I can have my nav, my footer, and then this will grow the height of it. That way the footer will never be like stuck to the top or stuck to the bottom of your home section. So that's great there. I'm liking it. Next, we're going to add in a theme provider, which our friend ShadCN has provided us. So if you go to the UI ShadCN and then you go to the docs, there is dark mode Next.js, and it's very easy. So we'll just follow this quickly, step by step, copy that. Let's go to our terminal. Let's kill this dev server, clear it, add next themes. Great. And then we're going to add, now we need to create a theme provider component. Within components, I like to add a themes folder or a theme folder, and then call it theme provider.tsx. And then I just pasted it in directly from ShadCN. And then we'll want to update our layout to use this system. So what you add is you import a theme provider, then you want to add the suppressed hydration warning to the HTML. And then the theme provider, we're just going to copy and bring over. So let's go to layout. So within the body, you want it to wrap everything within the body. So I just dropped it in right inside of the body, and then we're going to import it, of course. Okay, so now we imported it and we wrapped everything within the body in the theme provider. That way the footer and the header will also inherit the theme. Cool. So now next step is a mode toggle if you want it. I do want it, so I'm just going to copy the code. Super easy. There it is. And then we'll go into theme and add mode toggle, paste that in, and then it gives us an error that we don't have the drop down menu. And so if you remember from earlier, we had PMPX, shadcn, add drop down menu. And that will just add it to our components/UI folder. Nice and easy. Great. And then we just need to import it, and let's throw it into the footer because that's a good place to put these things. So let's do mode toggle here, and then we'll import it, and let's check it out. If we go to localhost, I got to restart the server. Give it a second. With Turbo, it's pretty fast. And you'll see we're getting a hydration error. And so this is because I forgot to follow the step where you, in the HTML, add suppress hydration warning. Beautiful. And so now we got our toggle, and let's switch it to dark mode. Look at that. And it's already set up. That's one of the beauties of shadcn, and the whole color scheme and everything is it's super easy. And so let's make the footer look a little bit better by adding just a little bit of spacing to there. And then let's do this, make it text muted foreground and text small. Beautiful. And we're going to convert this to block so it actually inherits the spacing. Nice. So yeah, that's that. Now we have a footer with a mode toggle, and we're good to go. Just wanted to briefly, that's basically it for the starter. I think the nav 2, what I would do is add a sticky top 0 and then a z index of 50. That way when I scroll, it stays at the top. And then just for kicks and giggles, let's add a accent to match the footer just because it looks nice. And then, yeah, from there, right, you're kind of off to the races. So on the page, I can kind of show you how I would do it quickly is take this, drop it into its own hero component, right? Now I just import the hero, then I can pull this out if I need to, if I want it to be in its own component, that type of thing. And then you can just keep building and say about section. Let's add a border top so you can see the, I gotta put it in. Now you can see I've got my about section. You can just keep going, build these reusable components. Let's make this look a little different. Great. So you can see we got the about, we got the hero. And then what's nice about the TSX, the design system, is you now have full access to controlling this. So let's say our nav, maybe we want a little bit more vertical spacing. You can come in here. Let's move this to 3. Now we got some more spacing on the top nav. I like that. Looks good. From the section, if you wanted to change the spacing up a little, let's take a look at that. So we go to section. Right now it's getting PY4. Let's change it to 6. And you can see we have a little bit more vertical spacing. You can go 12 if you want to go crazy, have a ton of spacing, white space, right? Let's just go back to 4. And that's kind of how you use that. If you're like, oh, the H1s are too big, the headings are too big, that's all contained within the prose component, which you can edit here, paragraph styles, inline styles, links, lists, everything. And then the other thing that's really important is the global CSS. This is worth going through, reading the shadcn docs on this. This is extremely powerful. And if you stay within his color scheme theme system, then you will be able to have automatic dark mode forever. It will be so simple to just use dark mode on any part of your components. It's amazing. I'm a big fan of this. I'll use it on all my projects. So, and yeah, I just, go through, memorize the background, foreground, card foreground, pop over the primary, secondary, and then mess around with choosing your own styles, right? So all these LCH, that is a more robust way to manage colors for a digital screen. So that's coming from, and maybe it's a little confusing because it is brand new, but it's coming, if I go to Arc, it's coming from Tailwind directly. So in V4, maybe you noticed, but there is no Tailwind config anymore. You just use your global CSS or whatever CSS file and define CSS variables. And then within here on the colors, you'll see they revamped the color system. It's amazing. It uses OKLCH, which provides like a much wider gamut. So a lot of the modern screens can have a lot more colors than RGB provides, or than RGB or Hex provides. And so this really takes advantage of it. And yeah, it's a great system. It is, I would say, a bit confusing switching from Hex or RGB over to OKLCH, but there's a lot of good tools. There's Tweak CN, which is awesome, where you can kind of build your own themes, and then it will actually give you the OKLCH colors. That way you can kind of build it with what you're used to and export it from there. And then ShadCN himself has a couple themes that are pre-built that you can quickly add by just copying the code. So that's an overview. This is where I would start if I was setting up a modern design system. And what's really cool about this is on this page, let's talk to Cascade about it. Let's say, can you make this a landing page for a surf company? Use ShadCN and ds.tsx, and we'll just link it, the component, and let's just see how it does. So just finished. Let's accept the changes so we can see what it did. You can see what I had to do is it got the craft design system great, but then it added a bunch of Tailwind colors like blue and purple, like that type of stuff, which is fine, right? It added blue 600 teal 6. But what issue you'll run into is that those won't be reflected in a theme switch. So basically I just nudged it and said only use colors that are in globals.css. That way I know that it will work dark and light mode. So let's take a look at our website. It's nice. It's got all the spacing handled for it, that type of stuff. Built a nice site. You can flip it and it should just work perfect. Amazing. So pretty easy. And it's nice because this gives basically AI a structure on how to work with your design system. And then, from here, it's just messing around with components and making them look the way you want it. Yeah, so that's a great overview of how I would start a project today. I'll make sure to publish this as a starter on GitHub and link it below. Thanks for watching, and as always, let me know if you have any other questions by commenting below. And thanks for watching and subscribing. Appreciate it.